I was 23 years old when this happened. I'm 27 now, and there hasn't been a week that has gone by that I haven't thought about this trip. To celebrate our friend Andrew's 21st birthday, we were taking him on a trip to Vegas. He was always a laid-back and kind of shy dude, and we all knew that he hadn't yet done the deed, so we planned on getting him really drunk and to put it bluntly, get him laid. We checked into the Carriage House Hotel, which was one of the more affordable hotels that we could find. We had 2 separate rooms as there were 7 of us in total. There were 4 of us in the room that I was in. Andrew was in the room with us. The first thing we did was eat, of course, as we were all starving. We then hit the casinos just to say that we did it. Out of the 7 of us, only 1 of us left with more money than entering. We checked out a bunch of different bars, and as the night went on, things got more blurry and everything got funnier. We got into a nightclub that was going wild. We caught 2 of our friends, John and Eddie, walking out with girls. They shot us the about to get lucky look, and we understood. The rest of us were trying to pressure Andrew into approaching a girl, but even in his drunk and somewhat loosened up state, he was still too shy to approach anybody or even dance. We got to the point where we were desperate to find somebody for Andrew. We could already foresee that he wouldn't meet any girls at this rate the whole trip. We left the club in search for a working girl. You may think our actions were weird, but as most people were by that time, we were completely hammered. We approached a girl walking alone, acting like a couple of retards, asked the girl if she would be interested in hanging out with our friend Andrew, who was very noticeably not quite as messed up as us, but still intoxicated nonetheless. The girl wasn't anything special. I could say that even in the state I was in, but we wanted Andrew to have a good time. I don't quite remember what she said in direct response to me, but I remember her voice being slightly deep to the point that I looked at my friend. I also have this slight memory of her analyzing Andrew from head to toe. Again, I don't remember what she said, but it led to her grabbing Andrew's arm and the 2 of them walking off down the sidewalk. We laughed as we could see how awkward Andrew already felt. None of us thought it was weird what just happened though. But just out of curiosity, to see what was going to go down, we decided to trail behind them. They didn't seem to exchange any words. In fact, it appeared as if the girl was pulling him. We followed for about 15 minutes, I would guess. It could have been much longer, but I wouldn't really know. It was a darker and quieter street. The 2 of them stepped into what we assumed was an apartment building, and we all laughed. But we were so proud and happy for him too. There was no point in us waiting there, so we went back to the club. At around 2 in the morning, we headed back to the hotel. Andrew wasn't in either of the rooms. I was starting to sober up a little, and a bit of concern began to arise in me. John and Eddie, who weren't with us earlier, were shocked to hear about what happened. We all kind of assumed Andrew was just spending the night with the girl. Still, it was out of character for Andrew doing anything like this, so it was just weird. I texted him and tried calling him. He never answered, but my friends told me to relax. I crashed minutes later. I woke to a ringing sound. At first, with my mind still in sleep mode, I assumed it to be an alarm clock and tried tapping at my phone to turn it off. As my head began to return to reality, I realized the phone was ringing. It was Andrew's number. I literally felt my heart drop for whatever reason. I told my friends who were already awake from the ringing. I answered and was greeted to heavy breathing on the other end. It was Andrew, and he sounded as if he were having some kind of panic attack. I put him on speakerphone so everyone could hear. Andrew began whispering into the phone. Most of it was incomprehensible, but we made out some of what he said. We heard him whisper,
"It was that woman. Guys, you gotta get over here right now."
We tried to engage him, but he wasn't answering anything we were saying. The other end went silent. We were all basically screaming into the phone, asking if he was alright, where he was, what was going on. I was already shaking in my skin at that point, but what happened next only made it 10 times worse. Something broke the silence on the other end. The sound of a door being opened with force, followed by the shrill and horrific screaming of Andrew, before the sound of the call ending. We were all freaking the fuck out. I called the police and tried to remember the address, or at least the street. We were so messed up last night that I couldn't even remember the route that we took. One of my friends claimed he did, though. The police came over to the hotel and they escorted us. My friend seemed to remember exactly where the building was. He guided the police past the club, down the side roads, and eventually to the building. 2 officers from the front car went inside. We were to wait by the other car. A few minutes felt like hours, waiting in anticipation and in fear of the worst. One of the officers stepped out. She came over to us and asked us to come inside to confirm if the dead body belonged to Andrew. I felt like the entire world just collapsed on my head as John and Jerry both started crying. They didn't want to go in, so I followed the officer into the building, which turned out wasn't an apartment at all, rather some kind of dark, abandoned storage building. There was the dead body, leaning out from the open closet. The emotionless face, mouth lifelessly hung open, staring up at the ceiling. It was horrible, but it wasn't Andrew. I knew it right away. The most noticeable feature, this boy had blonde hair, while Andrew had black hair. The officers had already scoped the whole place out, so they didn't know what to do. I took a look in the closet that I had a feeling Andrew was hiding in. Nothing. Not even his cell phone. We all did our best to forget about it, but a little more than a month later, I got a phone call during the middle of the night once again. I picked up. There was a bad reception and nobody was saying anything. I was about to hang up when a faint yet familiar voice said,
Jesse?
"Andrew?" I yelled. The sound of a door slamming in the background on the other end was the last thing I heard before the call ended. He didn't pick up after the 5 times I tried ringing him. So what did I do? I called the police and had them trace the call. The call was not coming from Nevada at all. No, it was coming from New Jersey. In fact, our own town, and a house not too far away. They said they were sending somebody to the house, but that wasn't enough for me. I had to go there myself. I GPSed that address, hopped in my car, and floored it the whole 5 minutes it took to reach the address. It was a vacant house on a corner. I sneaked up to the front door and put my ear against it to listen for anything inside. Nothing. I crawled around back where I found an open window. I listened for a moment. There were the sounds of small snaps and cracks from upstairs. The kinds of sounds you hear from somebody standing or moving on wood. I was sure that he was in there. I hopped inside, but I didn't even get to begin my search before noticing something at the edge of the hallway. Somebody was standing there, facing me, but I couldn't see their face. All I could see were their pale, exposed legs and long black hair down past their shoulders. It was a woman. I was feeling sick to my stomach, anticipating her charging up to me like in some kind of horror movie, but instead, she turned and ran in the opposite direction. I heard the sound of a door slamming shut, followed by footsteps stomping downstairs, and then yelling of a man and woman. There was an even heavier pair of footsteps now stomping up the stairs. That was my cue to run. I left the house and dove into the bush. Not even 5 seconds later, someone stepped out onto the porch, and for the first time in months, it seemed as if luck was finally on my side as a police car pulled up to the curb, flashing its siren. I heard the guy in the stoop mutter, "Shit," before slamming the door behind himself. The police followed inside. Apparently the idiot didn't even lock the door. I stayed hidden, as I didn't want to startle the cops and end up with a bullet in my skull. I waited by the car out front, and minutes later, one of the officers came outside with the guy in cuffs. I introduced myself and warned that there was also a woman in there, but they never found the woman. In fact, one of the bedroom windows were completely open, which implied that she escaped. Andrew was found upstairs, locked in a closet. He was in horrible shape, malnourished, hair long and dirty. You could smell him from a mile away. The police ran the records for the man. He was never married, so they really had no way of finding out who the woman was. He even claimed that he had only known her for a day. Nothing made sense, and it still doesn't. Andrew admitted that he was raped, beaten, and hardly fed. I can't even imagine admitting something like that to someone. The girl that originally escorted him to that building was only there to collect payment from what he described as the operators. For some reason, they forced Andrew to give them his hometown and addresses of everyone that was with him that night, which explained why they were in our town, but not actually why they were in our town. Like, what their intentions were. To kill us? To add us to whatever kind of sex slave operation they were running? I'm the only person he's told out of our group of friends, and whenever somebody asked about it, I just said I don't know what happened. Things were finally starting to look up, when a few days later, I got a text message from a random number one late night, saying, "Fuck you." Whoever it was blocked me, as I couldn't respond, so I just blocked them back. It happened again the next week, and then the next month. Sure, I had the idea that it had something to do with the incident, but I had no idea it would be taken as far as it was. I woke up one night with a hint of brightness in my room. There was light from outside, in the backyard, shining ever so slightly through the closed blinds. It wasn't sunlight, it was the backyard porch light. I could see a shadow moving in front of the blinds. Somebody was definitely out there. I couldn't really see out of the crack at the bottom of the blind, so I inched it up ever so slightly. There was somebody standing by the window, looking right at me, as if they were waiting for me. But they were gone before I could even think about grabbing my phone to get a picture of them. I strongly believe it was that woman I saw in the house. That was the last time I saw or heard from anyone involved in this shit. Nothing of this whole situation has made a single ounce of sense, even with the best explanation Andrew could give me. I don't see a point in getting into how Andrew and everyone else is doing, as it's nothing interesting. The only thing I can say is I'm waiting for the next time I see any of these animals, and I'll be ready to call the police or take them on myself. It was Halloween night of 2007, freshman year in high school, and I was with my friends, Ivan, Ryan, and Jesse. We were all dressed as the Super Mario characters. I was Luigi since I was the second tallest. Ivan was Mario since he's short and buff. Not that Mario is buff. Jesse was Waluigi because he's freakishly tall and skinny, and Ryan was Wario because he's just really fat. So they were the perfect group costumes for us. We live in a very non-congested suburban neighborhood with a decent amount of space in between houses. On Halloween, that's the worst thing ever. Less bang for your buck. We were trick-or-treating for hours, way past dark, and eventually came the time when most trick-or-treaters were heading home. My feet started to hurt, and I had to constantly switch arms for holding the now 10-pound pillow sack of candy, but we planned on going until our bags were completely full. A lot of the houses by now weren't answering anymore. It was probably past their cutoff time for giving candy to trick-or-treaters. Approaching our next house, we saw a purple bucket on the stoop, which was the best feeling ever. I was the one to get close enough to realize it was empty, which was the worst feeling ever. I turned around when I heard a knock at the window of the house. We all looked at the window. Couldn't see anyone, but heard someone call out, "Wait." The door opened and an older man, late 40s, already balding, stepped outside. He told us to come inside so he can get us some more candy. I said we could just wait out here. He responded saying something along the lines of, "Nonsense, come on in, we'll get you your candy." Ivan stepped in and said, "It's alright. Come on, Dan, let's go." I told the guy to take care and apologized. He just stood there watching as we walked off, not saying anything. I felt bad, but at the same time, that guy seemed like a creeper, and I figured I just dodged a bullet not going in there. If the story ended there, it wouldn't be scary, so of course it didn't end there. We skipped a few of the guys' neighboring houses just to get further away and continued on with our business. We were walking down close to the nature preserve now, so there weren't many houses around us. At this point, we were now walking back closer to Jesse's house. I noticed Ryan had stopped walking, and I turned around to see what's up. He said he heard someone moving from behind the trees in the preserve. Now, this was before everyone's phones had flashlights, so we couldn't just go searching in the woods for someone. Besides, we were just telling Ryan that it must have been a raccoon or something. You may think this is a bit of a cliche, but when things like this happen in real life, you always assume the more logical possibility. It's just natural. Why would we assume we were being followed? I had to put my arm around Ryan's shoulder and nudge him forward. A little ways down the street, me and Ivan picked up on the sound as well. When we all stopped, the sounds of the footsteps from beyond the trees stopped as well. Ivan yelled at the obvious stalker to go away, or we would beat the shit out of them. I knew he was just bluffing though. I could hear the nervousness in his voice. The snap of a twig from beyond the trees triggered a fight-or-flight response in all of us. Me, Jesse, and Ryan all ran for it. Ivan was at first charging to attack, but he quickly followed after realizing we had all taken off. We ran down the dark street, and we all noticed the sounds of at least 2 or 3 pairs of footsteps crushing the twigs and leaves in the woods. We banked it hard right down Jesse Street when it finally came up, and ran straight for his backyard, entering his house through the back door. The first thing we did was peek out through his living room window. We couldn't see anyone. We all had to gather our thoughts and discuss what the hell just went down in his living room, when all of a sudden we heard Jesse's backyard gate slam shut. Jesse dove to turn off the lights. There was a click and a bang from down in the den. It was more than likely Jesse's back door. We all agreed to go down armed with knives and face them. Jesse turned on his back door light, but there was nobody out there. Just then the front door opened, and we all screamed like animals. Jesse's mom and sisters came rushing downstairs. They had just gotten home from their friend's little house party. We all rested assured knowing it was just them. Jesse explained what happened, but made it seem a lot less dramatic. Me and Ivan went home after that and called it a night. At 12:30 a.m., I got a disturbing text message. It was from Jesse. It said, "It wasn't my mom." I texted back saying, "What?" He responded back quickly, saying, "It wasn't my mom in the backyard." My fingers slammed the buttons on my phone, responding back, "What do you mean?" There was a long pause before he finally told me that his mom and sisters said they never went in the backyard. I told him to immediately check the backyard from his upper deck. He had already done just that. He also told his mom everything, and she had already called the police. They didn't find anyone back there, but Jesse did mention the guy who invited us in while trick-or-treating. Nothing ever became of that, and nothing ever happened at Jesse's house again after that one Halloween night. Last Halloween, I was asked to chaperone my little brother Kevin, my little cousin Mike, and his friends while they trick-or-treated. No, I wasn't the typical cliched teenager that was pissed off because I had better things to do. I was perfectly content with hanging out with my little brother, my little cousin, and his friends. I was 18 years old, so I was a bit old to actually be collecting candy myself, so I asked my little brother to carry a smaller bag and put some candy in there for me at each house. By the time that small plastic bag was full, I was asking the kids if they were ready to go home, and every time I would ask, they would say no. They insisted on filling their bags to the top, but that was out of the question. I had enough, so I started leading them back in the direction of Mike's house. Suddenly, a white van pulled up next to us. The driver rolled down the passenger side window and asked me if I could help him out with something. "Nah, I gotta get these kids home," I said, as I directed my attention back to the group. He said he just needed me to fix his passenger seat into the upright position, as it was a 2-person job and he said he had a date. I told him it would have to be quick. He parked his car and told me to get inside. I opened the door and began fidgeting with the seat. He was telling me to lift, and then I would lift. He would then say put it back down. I'm gonna be honest, I thought this guy was just flat out dumb, until I heard the kids screaming outside. There was somebody trying to grab one of Kevin's friends. I almost fell on my face as I tried to get out of the van. When I did, I grabbed him by the throat and began to strangle him. The driver came out and shoved me to the floor and attempted to grab Kevin, but the owner of the house we were in front of came out front with a rifle in his hand. He fired a shot in the air, a warning shot, and with that, the two creeps hopped back in their van and drove off. I tried to grab a hold of one of them, but I wasn't quick enough. The van was gone down the street before I could even take 5 steps after getting up. I couldn't express enough gratitude to that old man who came out with the rifle. I wish I could say the story ended there, happily, but unfortunately the next day while watching the news, there was a report of a missing 9-year-old boy in our town. Now, I usually believe in coincidences, but I know that wasn't any coincidence. And I know for the rest of my life, it will kill me remembering how I could have prevented a kidnapping had I just grabbed a hold of one of those guys. Me, my best friend Jordan, and my friend Chris were trick-or-treating on Halloween night. We live in a really rural side of Pennsylvania, and Halloween always kind of sucked because of that. For all you city and urban kids, Halloween is a lot different when you live in a quiet, rural area. First of all, and most obviously, the walking distance between houses is much worse. However, people tend to give more candy to us since they get less trick-or-treaters. And that's the second thing, less trick-or-treaters. It's actually kind of rare to see other people trick-or-treating by us, mainly because we live in the middle of East Bumblefuck. So it didn't feel as festive or just Halloweenish. I'll tell you right now, it felt a lot spookier though, walking down foresty roads all alone with your group, only with the occasional house. And for that, maybe it was a perfect place for Halloween. It was our first house of the night. I remember the kind old man who answered had a huge bowl of Kit Kats and Snickers. He poured at least a pound of candy into each of our bags. It was great. Our next house was quite some hike away, but once again, the woman who answered was very friendly and gave a very generous amount of candy. After about 6 houses, our bags were starting to get heavy, but you have to realize it took almost half an hour to hit those 6 houses. We reached the entrance of the dirt road leading to smaller houses and trailer homes. The first 2 houses on this dirt road we tried didn't answer, so we decided to try one more on this road before turning around to find another area. We reached the very appropriately eerie property of a smaller house along the dirt path. The whole front yard had an orange glow because of the 4 torches that were lit up leading to the front porch. There was an orange bowl on the stoop decorated with black silhouettes of witches, pumpkins, and other Halloween themes. Besides 2 stray Tootsie Rolls, the bowl was empty. There was a sign on the door that read, "If there is no more candy, enter the back at your own risk for more." Under that there was an evil-looking smiley face, along with an arrow pointing to the backyard. Chris said let's just turn around and go back, but Jordan and I wanted to go around back. It seemed interesting, as if they had something cool set up. Chris had no choice but to follow us around the house to the backyard, which was a small clearing from the miles of forest that surrounded. The backyard was lit up orange as well, but not as brightly. There was a single torch that sat in the middle of the small yard. It provided enough orange light to see a note on the back door. We got closer to the back door and read the note. It was some kind of riddle. It said, "If candy is what you desire, then you have to look closer to the fire." And yes, I still remember that stupid riddle to this day. So of course we assumed that by the fire meant by the torch. Chris was saying he did not like this, that it seemed too suspicious. I was kind of weirded out a bit too, but Jordan seemed interested in it, and I didn't want to seem scared to him. Plus, it was the most interesting thing to happen all night in this boring town. There was nothing around the torch though. It was literally just dug into the center of the backyard. There was a small wooden shed by the corner of the clearing, and in the other corner were a bunch of tools and wood scattered across the grass. Jordan tried leading us closer to the woods, but I was with Chris now. I was pushing for Jordan to just leave now, as it was too weird and creepy to be looking for candy in a stranger's backyard. He kept telling me, hang on, one more minute. While he was looking around, I started to examine the place. The house had an old, dirty look to it, surely a very low-income home. I started to examine the windows. One of them was cracked, the other had blinds closed, and then I looked up at the upstairs window. There was somebody looking down at us, specifically at me. When he or she noticed me, they moved away from the window and shut the blinds. I told Jordan we should go. I looked over to the window of the wooden shed. I could see someone poking their head out ever so slightly. I grabbed Jordan, yanking him over to follow me, but he was frozen still. He was looking up at the woods. I looked to see what he saw. There was a person coming out from the woods. Jordan was laughing. I guess he thought it was supposed to be a part of this spooky setup. I watched with him until we saw the person come into light, wearing a genuinely horrific mask. And there was something in his hand. A machete. Jordan still thought it was a joke. Even Chris seemed to be laughing a bit. Hell, I started to think it was all just a nice little Halloween setup. Until the person wearing the mask charged at Jordan and swung the machete, only he missed as Jordan backed up in time. We all sprinted back out front where we saw somebody blowing out the torches. He spotted us and started chasing us. We ran all the way down the dirt road, back down the paved road, and made it back to my house. Jordan was throwing up. I'm not sure if it was because of running so much, or because of the fact that he almost lost his life. We told my parents right away. My dad called the police and asked them to come to the house. My dad then drove us to the house where it happened, with the police following us. By the time we got there, everything was gone. And by everything, I mean the notes, the torches, and the candy bucket. The house had been vacant for months. Nobody was living there. It was the perfect place to set up a murder scene. We requested the police go inside to check, as I did spot somebody spying on us from upstairs. But it turned out they were gone as well. We did the best we could to describe what happened and the people I saw. I believe one of the officers told my dad they would investigate further into this and thanked us for the info. Maybe you don't realize how sick this world is, full of insane, scary, messed up people, until you actually come into encounter with them.